Hi, everyone. Joining me today from the Bay Area is Ronald Ro, Chief Commercial Officer and co-founder of Awair. Ron, welcome to Healthy Air.
Thanks for having me, Eric. Huge fan of what you guys do and the podcast too. So happy to be here.
Thanks so much. Well, I want to provide our listeners with a brief background on Ron to give us context for our conversation. Ronald Ro is a chief commercial officer and co-founder of Awair. He's passionate about building products that inspire. After starting his career as an engineer at Boeing Company, Ron worked for Samsung's consumer electronics division in its corporate strategy office for 4 years, leading the company's new business and technology commercialization efforts. Ron then joined Cisco and was instrumental in launching, building, and scaling new products and business, its emerging technology group. Ron holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Purdue University and master's degree in industrial and operations engineering and MBA from the University of Michigan, where he was an investment fellow at the Frankel Commercialization Fund, helping to build and invest in Michigan-based early stage startups. All right, Ron, so let's get into it. Thanks so much for joining us again. Please tell us about your path to the world of indoor air quality.
Right. So when my daughter was born with a specific respiratory issues, I was curious about everything around, purifiers and humidifiers, anything you can do to kind of mitigate the issues that we see happening. So that was kind of my intro to the world of indoor air quality. However, that kind of led to different kind of interests around sensing, data, solutions, and whatnot. So I would say that really triggered me. And, I grew up in Seoul, Korea, where air pollution and fine dust has been an issue. And I've grown up in a family where we have been paying for subscriptions to get air purifiers, filters changed every month, and so on. So I've been kind of growing up in that environment where indoor air quality was important to manage.
Great. And so from that background, what then prompted you to co-found Awair and kind of take the plunge into entrepreneurship?
Right. So I co-founded Awair with Kevin Cho, my co-founder and the CTO of the company now, in 2013. At that time frame, I was at Cisco, and my first job at Cisco at Emerging Technology Group was to work on a new initiative called Converged Building Systems. So that we talked about a lot about energy efficiency, technologies around energy efficiency, and anything else that would make smart buildings possible. It was 2009, 2010. So it was early on in terms of the smart buildings technology conversation, at least on the commercial side. So, and my daughter was born with the specific respiratory issues. I met Kevin, and his kids had some of the skin and respiratory issues as well. So we kind of put together some thoughts on, okay, what's happening in this building technology? We talk a lot about making buildings tighter for energy efficiency, but what's next for occupants? Then, are we going to try to make buildings tighter and tighter? And then as we optimize for energy, is that really is really everything about building and the future of building? That's when I got to really understand, okay, the sensing, so that we could understand the baseline of what the building needs in terms of ventilation, purification, smartness in controlling assets and whatnot. That kind of led to my own problem of how do we keep my home safe and healthy, and not being able to really know the baseline to work on was a problem. Like everybody that I asked was, oh, you need to get that purifier, you need to get that humidifier, you need to get that dehumidifier, depending on where you are. But if once you start to ask whys, there's really no baseline of getting to the right solution. So that's how kind of come together. And you've started the company as well, so it's not like only one event that sparked. It was a kind of aggregate of things that happened to create our own problems and try to get to the solution for our own problems.
Mm-hmm. So now, fast forward 7 or 8 years later, and Awair is become a really successful and innovative, great company. Give us an overview of the company's mission, focus, the scale, the scope of your business today.
Right. So we want to empower people to create and manage the most healthiest, safest environment that they could create and manage. So basically, we are providing a set of sensors for both consumers and businesses to understand where they are in terms of air quality, and then set goals, and also put in place the right solutions to maintain the health and safety of their indoor spaces. So 7, 8 years in the past, we have seen different types of demand in the market. COVID-19 really heightened the level of awareness that we all are aware of. But the education around what to do, what to know about indoor air quality early on was challenging, and also the most the thing that we focused a lot on. And nowadays, kind of fast forward, we see a lot of different kinds of solutions that we could work together to help consumers and enterprise businesses make good decisions, right? So I think that's the excitement that we're going to talk more later on. But we have seen the markets change in terms of demand, amount of demand, awareness, and trying to get the right solutions in place.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into your product a bit. What dimensions of indoor air quality are you monitoring and continuously monitoring? And then talk to me a little bit about both the hardware side and then also the software and data side. And give us an overview of that, please.
Yeah, of course. So we currently measure kind of the known important indoor air quality components, such as carbon dioxide, which is important to understand the efficiency and amounts of ventilation based on occupancy, and TVOCs. They could be kind of understood as a aggregate of different chemicals, and PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5, which is fine particles, and temperature, humidity. And also we put together kind of the broader aspect of indoor environmental quality, which includes light intensity and noise levels. So those are kind of the 7 components that we measure. Now, our approach to our product is much more than just giving you data. Nobody wants more data these days, right? We have enough data. So our focus is to make sure we have products to help our both consumers and business users to share data and get to the right solutions as much as possible. So if you look at different stakeholders in the industry, right? Whether you are an employer or your employee, school district, students and parents, owner and tenant. So there are different stakeholders, but we recognize there's a little bit of imbalance in information when it comes to indoor health and safety. So how do we kind of bridge the gap as much as possible so that both parties collectively can make good decisions in keeping their spaces healthy and safe? That's kind of our mission, and our investment into resources to make sure we achieve that mission.
In terms of the features of the product, so it'd be good to get just an overview of those. I think one thing that I find pretty interesting, and you hit on it in your comments just then, is that you really go the next step of not just providing a lot of data, and there are a number of sensors and different data sources for air quality, but then it's taking it a few steps further to what does this mean for an individual person, and connecting it to their personal health and well-being, or for a company being able to take it there so that this is much more real, it's more actionable, it's leading to ultimately the end game that you're looking for here, which is improving kind of the people, what they're breathing and their general health and well-being. So I think general product features, but also that one in particular, which I think is pretty unique and interesting.
Right. So the feature-wise, we try to make our products, especially on the sensor side, as scalable and flexible as possible. What I mean by that is scalable in a way that we are, working with different business clients that have different requirements for installation. When it comes to installation and connectivity, it's important to have a flexible solution so that they could start with smaller projects and then help them with as much of a clear path to expand into their real estate and into their spaces. So we try to focus on that, whether it being, power over Ethernet and also Wi-Fi connectivity and some of the details around building connectivity like BACnet for integration. So those are the things that we put together, but make sure that they can be flexible and scalable. And putting together the data product so that they could actually get to make sense of data, understand the hotspots, such as, a floor plan in our dashboard where you can actually manage per floor, per building, and, buildings in different locations so that, if you are a property manager of a company that manages millions of square feet, then can I get to the most important thing as quickly as possible and really share that knowledge with their teams and then get to the right solution. And that's where I think there's a huge opportunity for us to work with solution providers. Not only the solutions that we provide, but also the types of things like when it comes to direct ventilation or purification, cleaning, and so on. So that's what we want to focus on. And, when it comes to our value proposition, the thing about that I'm excited about is we see more partners that can help us close the loop. When we start with data, every building is going to present different types of issues, and the issues will vary throughout the year, right? And can we get to the right solution at the right time as we do continuous real-time monitoring?
So in terms of the data, how are you finding that users are interacting with the data today? And I know it's probably hard to generalize, but you're working in offices and commercial real estate, schools and residential homes. How are you finding people are interacting with the data, and also who is interacting with the data? Is it the facilities team? Is it the individual users, a worker or, someone? And any kind of flavor of that would be really interesting to learn.
Yeah. So data sharing is the name of the game. And how much you are willing to share information also is is a variable. The trend is really getting to more transparency than before. I mean, transparency is a kind of a challenging word sometimes because different stakeholders have different objectives. Now, the stakeholders that I mentioned previously, some of the most forward-thinking clients are understanding the importance of sharing information. So, for example, if you are an employer and you are based out of a place where they have, periodic wildfires. For example, in California, we're in California, we are exposed to that. As an employer, can you make sure that your employees are taken care of and they are feeling cared by letting them know the best place to work or safest place to work? So if the wildfire is there in certain regions, are you in a position to guide your employees to stay home or let them know that the office is the safest place and bring them to the office? So I think the worst thing that could happen is you don't know, and your competitors know, or your contemporaries know, and they take action. So I think that's the trend we're seeing. Just like how 9/11 changed how we think about security. Things like COVID-19 pandemic that we have gone through in the last year or so, and the wildfires that we are seeing in certain regions of the world completely changed and will change how we view, we handle data and getting to the right solution and empower people that you are responsible for to make good decisions. So that's kind of where we are seeing and trend happening. So that's how we would like to address that, and as much as possible from our perspective.
Talk to me a little bit about your scoring. So a lot of your data, you're distilling down what you're picking up with your sensor technology into then just practical. A place has good or bad air quality, however defined. So it'd be helpful to understand how you're thinking about the scoring, what the ultimate scoring numbers are reflecting, and then how people should think about, good, bad, in between, and what they do about it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of getting to why of Awair scoring is when we first started building together, putting together a product for home use. We're talking about 7-8 years ago. So the awareness around having to manage indoor air quality was very specific to, we call it air care people. They understand they have specific problems like respiratory issues, allergies, and they know where they have used purifiers or something like that, humidifiers. Now, we wanted to really get them to understand very quickly, as quickly as possible, okay, my air is good, my air is bad. I need to get to something, a solution. So that's how we thought about, okay, how about we come up with a score that could give them a very easy way to digest what they're getting exposed to. So that's how the scoring concept came about. So 100 being great and 0 being bad. Anywhere you are, if you are in between 80 to 100, you are in green zone. Anywhere you are between 60 to 80, you are in amber orange zone. Anywhere you're below 60, then you are in a dangerous zone. You need to be acting on certain things immediately. So what we have done is we have taken on information from organizations like ASHRAE and OSHA and WHO to find the healthy zones of each component that I mentioned previously. And if you are theoretically within that zone, if your air is in that zone, you're going to get closer to 100. If you are away from those healthy zones, if you're getting away from those zones, then you're going to be deducted scores from 100. So that's how we approached the scoring. And some of us are familiar with AQI, the air quality index. Not everybody, but because of COVID, I think the awareness around AQI has grown. But we want to make sure that this Awair score is not just ours to own. We want to make sure that this could be improved and this could be collaborated to make it better. Because we started it, but that's not to say that this is something that we would only be making improvements. So there are partners like you guys and some other organizations that we would love to work together to improve the approach to getting this Awair score more of a applicable tool for broader audience as well.
Mm-hmm. And just picking up on that, so what role is your solution playing within the indoor air quality and indoor air quality kind of technology ecosystem? And you've already talked a lot about how now, with more awareness of indoor air quality and kind of the imperative we have with the pandemic and wildfires and other air quality risks, that it's spurring a lot of innovation and demand and so forth. So what role do you play? And then what other technologies really help fill things out or address some of the gaps that you've been mentioning? Maybe if you could call out a couple of categories of technologies where it really unlocks the full value of what you're doing and leads to the best IAQ outcomes for people.
Yeah. So I think we're playing like a coach role in a broader perspective of IAQ. Because when it comes to IAQ, continuous monitoring, we're trying to help you to understand your baseline. We're trying to help you understand what you might need to focus on short term and long term. So let's say if the purifying is an issue in the midst of wildfire, what are the things that you can do to mitigate dust particles in your HVAC and your space? That's a short term thing that we can help you understand the baseline, know the solutions, and help you understand the solutions you have implemented is effective. And then long-term wise, you know what? There are 25 rooms in this floor, and certain rooms tend to have higher CO2 based on occupancy for a certain period of a day and certain period of a week. That might not be able to get resolved in a short term wise. There's an HVAC issue, there's zone issue, there's always different kind of things that it could be a longer term solution. Mm-hmm. So giving you the information to digest now, but also help you to kind of understand this is short term solution that we could do, and this is longer term, but we also help you along the way if the solutions that you have implemented is effective. And then that's kind of the coach role that I see that we play in this kind of broader IAQ, and kind of working through that thought. I think if you do ventilation, purification, and manage humidity and thermal comfort well, you're pretty much addressing 99% of indoor air quality issues. Obviously, if you drill down in each category, then you're going to have different solutions. But those are all of the solutions that we think we could partner and work together so that our customers have a sustainable solution in place.
Mm-hmm. So you've been in IAQ now for, counting your time before Awair, for over a decade. IAQ Healthy Buildings. Recently there's just been an explosion of activity, prompted by some of these IAQ challenges, and you're seeing everyone from big established players to startups to the various categories of IAQ and kind of healthy building tech really kick off in a big way recently. And that's also coincided with much more public awareness about challenges of IAQ and so forth. So just talk a little bit about how you've seen the competitive landscape, from a technology solution provider over the past decade or so, and kind of where we are right now. Like, where are we at right now relative to the past 10 years, and where do you see things evolving to over the next few years?
Wow, that's a big question, important question. So maybe we could start with something that I have seen from my perspective, and then kind of expand on that.
Sure.
So if you look at building technology, as I mentioned earlier, I think we have focused around 1970s. We have focused a lot on energy efficiency. How do we use as little of a energy as possible? Early 2000s, I think there was a movement around understanding outdoor air quality and sustainable buildings, and also a bit of still energy efficiency. Kind of going into 2010s, around that time frame, I think we started to see a lot of research around healthy buildings that we are all aware of, and some of the things that are focused more on managing and improving indoor air quality in buildings. So that's kind of the trend, the kind of the bigger roadmap. I mean, the trend that we have seen from our perspective, and the things that have happened, like pandemic that we have gone through in the last year or so, have drastically heightened the level of awareness broadly from between consumers to business users. And nowadays, we're talking about how do we bring back, our colleagues to the office space, and then what are the technology that should be implemented to provide that peace of mind, right? So that's where we are in short term. But I think that really changed the perception and the things and the standards that we will have in place, and we already have in place for these spaces to include, so that it's not just pandemic focused. It's not just COVID-19 focused. It's not just certain pathogen focused. So it's exciting to see how the awareness around the indoor air quality and how to improve have been changed for good. Now, you and I understand how that's going to change post-pandemic. We don't know, but we're still kind of bullish around things that's going to be implemented around ventilation, cleaning of the air, and so on.
Mm. We've talked about the pandemic a little bit. Just really specifically, what has been Awair's experience of the pandemic, both as a company with employees, but then also how has it impacted kind of demand for your product? Have you seen any kind of uptick in that, or like over the past year and a few months, how has the company's experience been, given that it's so directly intersecting what you're working on in your mission?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working from home just like everybody else. And that also, as a company, have forced us to go through a different experience altogether. We have offices in Korea and a small presence in UK, EU. But overall, that experience, I think it's being shared. Now, the demand we're in a very different market and situation altogether, pre-COVID and post-pandemic that we have gone through. I think what that really helped us to see the market was, before, there were very focused group of clients and customers that we describe them as air care or air aware folks, mm-hmm. with specific experiences or symptoms and problems. But nowadays, the businesses in general, whether it being property managers or owners, operators, they see this as a must-have item to at least have a good understanding of where they are. However, I think we still have some ways to go around handling liability, who's responsible for what, and how data is going to help that to kind of bridge the gap. So, I mean, that's a whole another set of conversations that I think it's going on, because it's such a still early, even after pandemic, still early, in terms of getting those hashed out.
Yep. So just kind of switching gears a little bit, Awair is very active and thoughtful as it engages within IAQ. And it's not just from a purely techie kind of perspective, but it is, as we mentioned before, I mean, you really take a human angle to this, and you talk about how IAQ is not just a bunch of numbers and these various particulate levels and whatever, but you talk about what this means to real people. And I think a great example of this is your company blog. I mean, even just the founding story of the company connects to your own personal story with your daughter and your family. Why has the human side of IAQ been such a priority area for you, and why you've taken that approach relative to what many others do, which is really just rely on the pure technical side of things?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And that kind of, I think, goes back to the founding mission. When Kevin and I started it, we looked at how these spaces are being optimized, and it was really optimized for the cost of running the building. And it was very much focused on energy efficiency, which means it was not the occupancy, health, and safety was not top of mind. So kind of understanding, oh, you know what? We're going to have more people coming to, and we're going to have more urbanization. We're going to have buildings. We're going to have dense buildings and dense cities with more buildings and built environments. That means energy efficiency always going to be important. And then the occupancy, health, and safety is going to be as important. And how much investment is being spent on the people, right? If you look at a building, right, and then you look at how much investment is spent to the people that are inside working and living, that is actually much more than the energy is being used to run the building. So that's the kind of the founding story, and to help the technology, other technologies to really assist to optimize the level of safety and health for the occupants. I think that's how kind of the approach to technology and approach to our clients' needs have been. You know, we take consultative approach to all of our sales, and that means we try to understand the problems that they may face related to occupants, related to their employees, related to people. So I think that's kind of how we have approached technology, what to implement, what to share with our value, what to share with our content. I give full credit to our marketing team to kind of message that and then put it out there. But that's how our kind of approach has been throughout.
Mm-hmm. So recently, Awair, along with other companies, including Safe Traces, launched the Aspire group. So Aspire stands for Alliance for Sustainable Practical IAQ in Real Estate. Could you give us a little bit of just background on this group and why Awair was involved and helped launch this?
Yeah. So this is absolutely an exciting time for you and I and all the founding pieces and companies for Aspire. I kind of think of it as similar to Avengers. And the reason for that is, like, we all have very specific expertise and approach to providing the best solutions when it comes to IAQ to certain clients, whether it being owners and operators and property managers. So providing a holistic view on how IAQ can be improved for different types of clients, and as still with all the heightened level of awareness, where I think we're still in an infancy of IAQ in general, and how that could be commercialized and provided as important value. That's what we're trying to do, and help certain clients understand what they could implement as a strategy to best IAQ solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, I guess from just adding in a comment here, I think that the opportunity for new voices to come into the conversation regarding IAQ, and that also the opportunity to kind of take some of the different factors, some of which are in tension, but there's the sustainability versus health and wellness kind of side of IAQ. There's also just the practical cost implications that you highlight regarding what it will take in a building to improve the IAQ, and maybe reframing that, but also rethinking that. So it's really exciting. And, I think that the space, there's a lot of innovation, and having a kind of group that is bringing together multiple different innovative technology companies who have a unique angle within IAQ is just a fantastic opportunity for us, and really excited about it. So just looking towards the future, and looking towards the future of IAQ, what do you see? What do you think is going to change over the next 5 to 10 years, practically in spaces that people are occupying, whether it's an office, a home, a school, all of which you are active in today? And I'll just kind of, put the goalpost of this question on: are we going to be largely in the same place that we are in today, where there's a lot of talk, and then, IAQ is largely going to be as it is, today, 5 to 10 years from now? Or are we going to see kind of big changes? Are we going to see kind of a steady stream of changes? And kind of where do you think we're going to be on that spectrum? And what do you think is most ripe for change? Where you think, yeah, well, if anything is going to change, it's going to be this or that?
Yeah, another huge question, Eric. So I'm not going to do justice to your question, but I'll try. So if you look at macro trends, the urbanization and more dense population in these places, I think that trend, coupled with the increased level of awareness around what needs to be done to really optimize for occupants' health and safety, that kind of already going to put us in a very different space altogether, and markets altogether as well. Now, what I mean by that is, if you look at how new multifamily buildings are built in the US, we're seeing multifamily housing built on certain indoor health certification requirements. A couple of years ago, it was really hard to imagine that that's going to be an important factor for these multifamily housing developments. Whether it being hot markets for a lot of developments happening, whether it being or the retrofits. I think optimizing for indoor health and safety, IAQ specifically, is going to be a must-have. And that's why I think we're very early stage now, but I don't think we're going back. Just like the airports and the security around it are never going back to pre 9/11. So that trend, I think we're seeing, and we're seeing more data being shared. And data, just like if you look at building management system, for example, you really can't see that particular technology, right? Every day as an everyday user of the building, right, as an occupant. But it plays a very, very important role in terms of indoor air, right? So, and we're going to be seeing those things, and we're going to see the data around how those things are helping or not helping improving indoor air quality as data gets being shared and be more transparent. And then the solutions around, oh, you know what? We really don't have to change these things. We may really have to try these things to address ventilation issues and cleaning air issues. So I think we're going to see more data sharing. We're going to see more of the data-driven approach to solutions. We're going to see more visualization of things because, air is invisible, but if you can visualize the problem that you may have that you don't know, you can't see until you have a technology to do so. I think those are going to be the drivers and the trend that we will see IAQ in a total different state compared to a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly on that point, and this is touching your company and ours as well. I mean, there's really, I'd say, a building movement towards acknowledging indoor air quality or kind of the insufficiency of standards and regulations, and which represents a big public health risk that needs to be accounted for. And where that kind of conversation ends up dumping out is that we need higher regs and standards, and we also need data, either existing data or new data, on a continuous basis to assess, the health and safety of buildings. And, so it's interesting to see how that will play out. There's certainly, proponents of that and think that will happen inevitably. It's just a matter of time. There are a lot of skeptical people out there saying, yeah, that sounds good, but, I'll believe it when I see it. And the story is kind of unfolding as we speak. So it'll be very interesting, but certainly, to the extent that movement moves forward, it's going to create, really strong demand and an opportunity for folks like you and Awair and others, including us.
For sure.
Just as we kind of close out here, so I'm really interested, just as someone who's a building and IAQ kind of technologist, what other companies, technologies, and then thinkers and influencers in the space do you really respect, that you get excited about? Who are you reading? Kind of what other products are out there where you're like, wow, that's pretty cool stuff, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, completely aligned with what you're doing, but just interested to hear your perspective on that, because I know that you're really involved and knowledgeable about the broader space.
Yeah. So, I mean, selfishly, I'm looking at a lot of developments on sensor side. I think, there are a few ways that are describing the kind of future of sensor. The thing that one of the terms that I like is pervasive sensing. So we're going to be seeing different types of sensors being commercialized, so that, companies like us could incorporate it into our sensor network. Whether it being formaldehyde or certain chemicals that are specific to certain regions. Some of these sensors are not as, accurate and consistent and commercially available yet. But I think those are going to be the kind of the low-hanging fruits that we will see happening in sensor. But also the technology to make sensing more part of what we do in spaces, so it doesn't have to stick out. It doesn't have to be out there, but it could be just part of the building. How do we achieve that? And there's a lot of technology around that I'm interested in learning. I think there's a lot of movement around data visualization, meaning because air is fundamentally invisible, how do we make sense of data that we collect, and how do we make sense of the solutions that are being implemented to really understand the investment that our customers have made is worth the hassle, worth the effort. So whether it being data driven technology or specific ways to visualize the airflow. I mean, what you like what you guys do, and that's going to be very fundamental to understand indoor air quality and how it's being managed. So as fundamental it is, I think that's something that we really haven't seen implemented at a enterprise level in the last few years. I think we're going to see more demand coming into that. So I'm interested to see how all technology, whether it being machine learning or even AI, to help us make sense of data better and visualize so that it is digestible. And it's not a rocket science to implement a solution, right? And then I'm just particularly interested in different types of spaces, like even in cars, for example. We spend quite a bit of time in driving, especially if you're in California because of traffic and whatnot. But if you're in the middle of Asia, countries in Asia, then you might be in the middle of dust season, and you're wondering if the space that I'm in is safe. So different types of spaces, whether it being, office, school, hospital, hotels, they present all different challenges, and even cars, transportation in general. Those are kind of the things that I look at to see what needs to be done to address the issues. Because overall, we spend 90+% of our time in indoor spaces, and those are not just offices or homes. It's a combination of indoor spaces, right? So the challenges that these different kinds of indoor spaces provide to implement the solutions that we talk about, it's going to be different. But that's also what I'm interested in.
Cool. Well, awesome discussion. I want to give you the floor before we close out here to just say anything, any parting thoughts, words of wisdom, any topics that we didn't hit on that you'd like to.
Yeah, so I think there's a fatigue after having gone through the pandemic, as we all have globally, whether it being working from home or trying to make sense of the whole different problems that we've been dealt with. So the fatigue is real, but I hope we could get through that. And it takes a village to do so. So having good technology and partners in place to address that is very encouraging. So I hope we could be working together to get back to what we like to do. I don't know if we could call it new normal, but the words of encouragement and the excitement is definitely there, and I want to share. And one thing that I want to point out when it comes to what we are talking about, indoor health and safety and IAQ specifically, is there's no one solution. There's no perfect building. There's no perfect home, right? So that's why I think the consultative approach from folks like us, and also the willingness to, learn about new things if you're a homeowner, if you're a business, and really try to get together and work together to get to the right solution that can be implemented and sustained. That's what, gets me excited also, but hopefully that's all something that can really lead to some positive impact in the world that we live in right now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we covered a lot today already. So thanks for all the good questions, and it was fun.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Ron. Really appreciate your time and perspective and candor, and really exciting stuff you're working on. Congratulations on building such a exciting, innovative, impactful company, and we look forward to tracking your progress. And thanks so much again.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me.